Hi and welcome or welcome back. I hope the springtime, if you're in the northern hemisphere like I am, has been treating you well. In the last little while, I've been struggling with my journaling practice while juggling lots of life things. My fiance and I bought our first home, which is very exciting, and we move in a couple of months, and it's happening really fast. Coupled with wedding planning, there's been a lot going on, to say the least. Throughout these changes, I've found myself missing my journaling practice and wanting to come back to it, but feeling sort of disconnected from it. Thankfully, I've gotten over my journaling slump now, and I'll be sharing how I did that. I'll talk about some tools and techniques that I used and what worked for me to bring that spark back. This video is also sponsored by Lorstrom 1917 Canada. On lorstrom1917.ca, you can use my code Emily20 for 20% off of your order. More on my favorite journal brand later. I'm going to break down the video into three main components: tools, experimentation, and mindsets. To start, I want to talk about some tools that I find really helpful. When it comes to trying to sit down to journal, I was finding myself scrolling on my phone and just zoning out or avoiding my feelings by picking up my phone mindlessly. And then before I realized it, I would have spent half an hour scrolling on my phone when I really just sat down to journal. I have a few productivity apps on my phone that have helped with other areas of my life, so I decided to try them out in the context of journaling. Forest is one that I've used for literally a decade. It's this really cute app that lets you plant a digital tree. I also have the widget on my phone right here, and when I tap on it, you can see that this app lets you plant a tree for any amount of time that you want to stay focused, and while it's growing, you're not allowed to close the app or use other things on your phone. It's really simple and it's really cute. When you successfully plant a tree, it goes into your little digital forest, and you also receive coins that let you unlock different types of trees and plants. So I have all kinds of trees and little flowers and things like that. You can also use your coins to plant a real actual tree in the world through their nonprofit partner. I've planted 2, and there's been over 1.6 million that have been planted by the community. This is not sponsored, by the way. I've just used them for a really long time, and I find that if I set a timer and plant a tree for 15 or 20 minutes, it's a really nice way to time box myself and keep myself from using my phone, and then I find I will end up likely journaling for even longer than the timer that I set. But it's just nice to kind of put that aside and have that cute little tree growing. I also use the homepage widget like I was showing you, and I use the Chrome extension, so it's really nice to have it in both places. Another app I swear by that I tell everybody about, again, not sponsored, but just really love it, is called OneSec. And this is another really simple application that gives you an intervention every time you open an app that you find really distracting, and you can set up which ones those are on your phone. For me, I was worst with Instagram. So when I open Instagram, what ends up happening is this intervention comes up, and it's different every time, and it makes you wait and gives you different options for doing something else instead of scrolling on your phone. So there are lots of different options that come up that I've set up here, and then after a while you can still open the app if you really want to or you really need to, but it's a really great way of just stopping yourself from that mindless opening of the app and scrolling before you even realize what you're doing. I have it set up for lots of different apps on my phone, but Instagram is one that I kept reaching for, especially when I wanted to sit down to journal. I would tell myself I was looking for inspiration from other journaling accounts and then end up scrolling on things that didn't really line up with what I was trying to do. So it's just better to have it blocked like that. If I really, really, really want to use it, I can still use it. I also have the browser extension on Chrome for this too, so for my laptop, I'm covered. Another one that I was using all the time anyway, that I started using specifically for journaling as well, is of course Spotify. I'm able to go to some chill hop or some really cool jazz playlists and really set the mood. I find that really helps me get into a calm state, get me into a focused state without it being super quiet, or without worrying about lots of lyrics and things in the background. One that I had been listening to for a while is Stardew and Chill. I've been playing Stardew Valley a lot recently, and I found this one where they remixed the Stardew Valley soundtrack with more chill hop music as well. So I found that to be pretty fun. Being intentional about how I'm using my time and making my phone a tool for helping me journal instead of something that's distracting me has really helped me get out of that journaling slump and break me out of that pattern, because I don't want to sit down and try to journal only for me to be scrolling on my phone and really have nothing to show for it, especially if I'm trying to journal before bed or do it in a relaxing way, and then I find myself watching YouTube shorts for 15 or 20 minutes. Definitely not the same as what I want to be doing. So I suggest those apps and extensions if you're interested in blocking out those distractions. I'll leave some links below. The next thing that I wanted to talk about is what made the biggest difference, I think, in getting my spark back. And that's using my journals and my tools in different ways than I used to and bringing a sense of experimentation to it. Instead of trying to force what I would usually do and try to drag myself through it, I asked myself what sounded fun or interesting, or what are some different ways that I could still use the supplies in ways that I wouldn't normally. I've been on a no-buy since January 1st, and today is April 21st, so it's been pretty successful so far, and I didn't want to pick up new supplies either to get that spark back, so I wanted to dig back into what I had and maybe things I hadn't been using before, or things that I could use in a different way. One of the things that I started to do that you might have seen in my previous videos is bring around a smaller journal that I could use instead of just scrolling on my phone when I'm out and about. I used to feel like journaling was an at-home thing. I would get really weird and shy about bringing my journal out in public, and I just felt like people were looking at me and, were going to read over my shoulder or something. That's not the case. So I decided to move into a smaller journal and bring this with me everywhere I go. I even tuck a little Leuchtturm 1917 pen in here. It actually matches this notebook because it's the perfect little size to fit in my A6, and then I can bring this around. It's great for having a space to jot down ideas or thoughts on the go when I usually wouldn't, or I would put it in my phone, which really isn't the same. And it gives me some space and time to journal when I usually wouldn't. I would usually wait until I was at home and had my desk all set up and things like that. So it's a nice way to include journaling in a way that I hadn't before, and in a size that I hadn't really used before. So this idea of using journaling in a different way and in a different context really helped me to come back to journaling a little bit more. When it comes to other experiments and ideas, something I decided to come back to was my notecard system. You might have seen me talk about this in a previous video as well. I've been making a point to take notes and build my physical knowledge library because I've been learning a lot of things recently, and when I didn't really feel like writing down my thoughts or my feelings necessarily, having this space to write down some facts or some knowledge that I was interested in at least got me using my supplies and using my pens and pencils. It's not technically journaling, it's adjacent to journaling, and I find this to be similar to or a way of creating a commonplace system for knowledge. The thing I like about this is that the physical cards are a lot of fun to hold and touch and use compared to keeping things on your laptop. And if you are looking for something, you're physically interacting with it, you're remembering maybe what it looked like on the paper, you're reading through things and shuffling through them, and you can put different ideas right next to each other in your deck, and they can interact with one another and be beside each other and potentially have that spark of interesting connection that you wouldn't have made before. I made a whole bunch of cards using supplies that I had before to see if I would like it and to see what size I liked and things like that. So all of these white ones here pretty much are ones that I cut and printed myself. And then I also created these little cards that have the tabs on the top as well to keep things organized. So really cute. And then I really wanted the Foglietto note cards that have been all the rage lately. I loved the colors. They're also fountain pen friendly, more so than the paper that I was using here, to be honest. And they're just a lot of fun to use. So I came back to these and I've been using them to write down things about home organization and style and space and furniture layout for a new place, since I'm looking into interior design, for example, and using this supplies. Even though, again, it's not really journaling, this idea that would keep me coming back to my desk, keep me using my supplies, was better than not using them at all. And it sparked that want to sit down and use the supplies versus being avoidant of it or feeling like there's this weird pressure. Even though they are really fun, I found that I still missed having that journaling space where I'm putting my thoughts and feelings down. And I think there's definitely a space for this, and I'm going to continue using these and filling them out. As you can see, I have quite a few more to use. I did want to go back to my journal somehow, in some way. I decided to figure out, I've seen commonplace journaling around, and I love the note card system more so than most commonplace journals, but I wanted to see if commonplace journaling had a spot in my collection. So as I'm using the supplies, I'm finding that the pull toward using my ride or die Leuchtturm journals is coming back for me. I started using this as a commonplace journal as well, or just experimenting with the idea of using it as a notebook. I have a home organization section here where I was writing down some notes from a YouTube video that I was watching, and I found it was a really great spot to get down lots of thoughts and then move that information over to the cards. Because when you're using a card of this size, this is A7 size, you have to be really specific about what information is worth keeping, what you want to really write down and remember and look back on, and what might not be as helpful for you to use later. Versus when you are in a notebook, it's easier to kind of ramble on and fill up as much space as you want because there's all these pages to fill. So it was a really cool experiment, and it's one that I like. I might still use my journal in this way, have a first pass at lots of notes, and then move that information over to the cards, because I find that this is harder to find the information jumbled up in all my other pages. But it was a great way to experiment. So another example of coming out of your comfort zone. Being at my desk and enjoying my supplies and doing something outside the norm really helped me break out of that blah feeling and get that spark back, because there wasn't that pressure. When I finally came back to this journal and felt what it was like to write on the paper again and be in here with my fountain pens, I found I really missed it and wanted to get back to writing my thoughts and feelings. But my usual way of decorating a lot and having a solid idea of what I want to write really wasn't working for me. It was making me feel more stressed than interested in journaling. So I decided to experiment once again. I thought back to when I committed to doing morning pages for 100 days as part of the 100-day project a few years ago. If you haven't heard of morning pages, they're these idea that as part of Julia Cameron's book, The Artist's Way, which is a cult classic book, it's been around for decades. And the idea is that you do 3 sides of letter-sized paper journaling every morning. Stream of consciousness, it doesn't even have to make sense or have proper grammar or anything. And the idea is to get all of your thoughts and mental clutter down on paper. Then when you go throughout the rest of your day, you're not weighed down by all these thoughts and feelings and whatnot. That's just kind of thought junk or mind clutter that is sort of getting in your way in order to be creative. I really liked that idea. I did it for 100 days as part of the 100-day project, which is a free thing that people do every year for 100 days where you commit to doing a small creative act every single day. And I combined those two together and I did 100 days of morning pages. I didn't want to do that level of commitment this time around. I didn't want to commit to 100 days or morning pages every morning, but I took that idea of stream of consciousness writing and I decided to run with that instead. So some mornings and sometimes even in the evenings, I will write stream of consciousness in this journal and have no rules about how it looks or what it has to say. This is a B6 plus size journal from Leuchtturm, and I found that if I opened it up, this is about the size of an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. It's a little bit smaller, but the idea would be that I would write 3 spreads worth of writing, and that would be the equivalent to morning pages. Coupled with the Forest app I talked about before, where I'm setting a timer for 15 or 20 minutes, it's a really great way to give yourself just enough structure, just enough time to fill up a whole bunch of pages with your thoughts without having to worry about it. It's easy to come back to this journal, and I always find myself missing it after a time away just because I love using it so much. I love the paper, I love the style of it, I love how simple and clean it is. And as a brand ambassador, I'm always talking about them as well. Even before I was a brand ambassador, I loved these journals and I had videos on them. You can check out my earlier videos to see, but I've been using them for years and I wouldn't suggest them if I didn't love them. Also been partial to the dot grid journals, of course. If you know me, you know I love dot grid, but they do have other rulings as well. They have lined, they have grid, and they have plain as well as dot grid paper. And they're all different sizes as well. Right here I have the A4 Plus Master. This is the largest journal that they have. This one is in plain paper. I'm using it as sort of a wedding planner. Actually, no, I'm wrong. This is in dot grid as well. But you can get this in plain also. And it is absolutely massive. So you can go all the way up to A4 Plus. You can go all the way down to A6, and you can do anything in between. The other reason I really love these is I'm really not gentle with them and they hold up super well over time. If you want to stock up on your favorites or you want to try a new size or a new ruling, definitely check out leuchtturm1917.ca where you can get 20% off of your purchase using my code Emily20. That is only on the Canadian website, so check that out if you want to see more and explore more of what they offer. Thank you to Leuchtturm 1917 Canada for sponsoring this once again. Finally, I wanted to talk about changing mindsets and my approach. I sort of touched on this a little bit when I was speaking about experimenting and how coming back to journaling in different formats really helped me come back to the spark of journaling and really enjoy it again. For the time being, I've decided to really simplify my journal system and come back to the reasons why I love supplies and journaling in general. And I suggest you do that as well if you are struggling in a journal slump. I kept falling into this trap of wanting things to look really pretty or look really nice in order to share it with everybody or even just for myself, and coming up with the next best page or collage I've ever done instead of focusing on the real reasons why I wanted to do it in the first place. Using fountain pen inks, engaging with my supplies, having that tactile experience and the analog experience of writing things down and engaging with the knowledge or thoughts that I have in my mind are both really enjoyable and meaningful to me. I really want to think things through on paper because that's how I think through things, so it means a lot to me. Another thing I did is changing my expectations of myself during this really busy time in my life. It's unsustainable to think I could commit to a 100-day project right now, even though it sounds like a lot of fun with moving and planning and everything going on. I'm going to have to pack up all this stuff and move it to a new space and set that up as well right in the middle of everything. So maintaining my expectations of just doing what I can for now really helped me open up to the idea of coming back to journaling again. Having a mindset of experimentation as well and just seeing how things go instead of thinking that I have to have the perfect right answer every time is really a great way of deciding whether you can move forward with something or how to come back to it when it's been a while. Adjusting your expectations to what's realistic based on what's happening in your life, and also experimenting with what you already have without having to buy anything new or buy somebody's course or pick up something that you don't have yet can really make things go a lot quicker and feel a lot more natural instead of forcing it by buying something new or shiny that won't really bring back that spark for the long term. Finally, something to remind yourself of and something that helped me is to remind myself that my journals and supplies will be there when I want to come back to them or when the time is right. There's no timeline to them. They're not going to turn into pumpkins at midnight if I don't use them. And of course, you don't want to put them on the shelf forever, but knowing that they'll be there and that they're waiting for you to come back is a great way to take the pressure off and say, when you're ready, we will be there. And it's not a time pressure or a deadline. It's a hobby, and it's something that could also be useful or enjoyable or functional for you. With all that being said, I hope that you found it helpful and you found it interesting to hear about even somebody who has a journaling channel on YouTube can sometimes struggle with journaling and how I got out of my slump. Between this little guy here, my Leuchtturm journal, and my note card system, I think this is going to work super well for me in this time where I need a lot of minimalism. I would be really curious to hear how things are going for you though, and if you have any other advice in the comments, I'd love to see it. In the meantime, I will see you in one of my previous videos or in the next one that I post. Bye.